We continue now at the top of Daf Yudalid Amud Beis in Meseches Nazir. This is Nazir Daf 14b. On the previous summer, there was a machlokas amoraim. Let's say you have a situation of a person who is doing a nazirus, and then in the middle of that nazirus, he has to suspend the nazirus because he has to do a different nazirus because he just had a son. And so now in the middle of the nazirus for his son, he becomes tameh. And when you become tameh, it undoes all of the days that you've counted so far. So we understand that it undoes all of the days that he counted for the nazirus term for his son. But what about from his own nazirus? Did they all merge together into one nazirus and he has to start everything over? Or no, do we say that the days that he did before for his own independent nazirus, that still counts? Right now he's in a different period of nazirus, and the fact that he became tameh doesn't affect that first nazirus. So that was a machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan said it undoes everything, and Reish Lakish says no, it only undoes the nazirus he's in right now. It doesn't undo the nazirus that right now is in suspension. And so the Gemara now brings a similar machlokas amoraim between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Nitma b'mei tzarato. What happens if he becomes tameh while he has tzaras? The halach is when a person has tzaras in the middle of a nazirus, so that suspends the nazirus, similar to the case on the previous summit. And during that time of the suspension, he becomes tameh. So what happens in that case? And it's the same machlokas. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Sos. Rabbi Yochanan says it undoes everything that he's done so far. Reish Lakish Amar Eino Sos. Reish Lakish says no, we're in a time of suspension of the nazirus, so it does not undo the nazirus. And the Gemara explains Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soser. Rabbi Yochanan says it undoes everything. The haba nazirus koi, because he is in the middle of a nazirus. We're in a time of suspension, but he's in the middle of a nazirus. Reish Lakish Amar Eino Soser. Reish Lakish says no, it does not undo everything. Tzaras lachud unazirus lachud, because the tzaras time period is an independent time period. When you're suspended from the nazirus, you're not in the nazirus, and the nazirus is a separate time period, and therefore it is not undone. And the Gemara explains why do we need both of these cases, both of these machlokas. And the Gemara says, "Utzricha, we need them to have this machlokas in both cases. Why? Because we only had the first case where he's in the middle of the nazirus for his son. So Bahahi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Soser. Over there, Rabbi Yochanan says everything becomes undone because Shem Nazirus Achasi, as we explained on the previous summit, it's all Nazirus here, so it merges together into one Nazirus. But here, maybe he would admit to Reish Lakish, the Nazir Lachud, Vitzaras Lachud, that the Nazir and the Tzaras are independent. And the Gemara continues, V'itvar Baha, and if I only had the case of the Tzaras, so I would say the opposite, Baha Kam Reish Lakish. Here Reish Lakish says that it's considered to be independent and it doesn't undo everything. Aval Bahach Ema Model Rabbi Yochanan, but again, maybe in a case where it's one nazirus being suspended for another nazirus, maybe he would admit to Rabbi Yochanan that it all merges together and everything becomes undone. And so that's why the Gemara says Sricha, that's why we need both cases. And the Gemara continues, Nitma biyom gidol sar, if he becomes tameh on the day of the growth of the hair. And we will go with Tosas' explanation for this Gemara, Nitma biyom gidol sayar, perish amar hareini nazir shloshim yom. The explanation is as follows. Let's say he says, I'm a nazir for 30 days. Ucheshemona chaf min naziruso, and then he counts 20 days from his nazirus, and gilchu listam al karcho. So some bandits come and they end up shaving off all his head early. He's supposed to do 30 days, they end up cutting off his hair after 20 days. The hashta lo yuchal legaleach biyom shloshim lenaziris. Now, when day 30 arrives, he won't be able to shave because we say it's not really considered growth of the hair unless you have 30 days of growth. So on the 30th day, he won't be able to shave. Ulahavi karbanosov, and he won't be able to bring his karbanos either. Adachar shloshim miyom shegilchu alistim. He's going to have to wait 30 days from the time that the bandits shaved him. The ein gidol pachos mishloshim yom, because hair doesn't grow in less than 30 days. Vehizchil halamid, and so now he begins counting his 30 days new. Ucheshemona asara sayim naziruso. Now really, when he finishes 10 more days, the actual term of the nazirus is over. Sharei tchila mona esrim, because he already counted 20. Terem shegilchu halistim, before the listim shaved him. V'elu ha'esrim yom ha'achronim. So these last 20 days that he's counting, really it's not part of the nazirus. It's just to grow out the hair so he can shave. Einam rak legadil seir sheyuchal legaleach achar nazirus. So it's just in order to grow out the hair so that he can shave at the conclusion of the nazirus, because again, at the conclusion of a nazirus, that's what a nazir does. He shaves his hair and he brings his karbanos. Ulahavi karbanosov, and then he'll bring his karbanos. Uvahem nitman. The question of the Gemara is, what if he becomes tameh during that time period when the nazirus itself is over, but he's just waiting to bring the karbanos? He's just waiting a little because he needs to grow out his hair. And Tosfos points out, why does it say the day of growing the hair? It could be multiple days. Over here in the example that Tosfos gives, there's a number of days that he has to wait in order to allow the hair to grow. He has to wait an additional 20 days. So why we call it one day? V'lo nakat bimei. Why doesn't it just say bimei, meaning to say the days where he's growing out his hair? Why is it nitma biyom gidol seir? And so he says, and not only that, in the question before, by the tzaras days, we called it plural, the days of tzaras. And he explains, when it comes to tzaras, that takes more than one day. It's certainly days. Aval gidol seir, but it is possible that the growth of the hair, that extra, the extension you need to do to grow out the hair, that could just be one day in theory. It could be it'll just extend it for one day. Let's say the bandits shaved him on the second day of his Nazirus. So now he's going to have to wait one extra day for the hair growth. He's only going to add one day to the shloshim in order to have the growth of the hair. But the point is, it could be one day, it could be a bunch of days, but the point is he becomes tamei during that time when the Nazirus is over, but he's just waiting for his hair to grow for the 30 days. And the Gemara continues that in such a case, it's a machlokas amoroim. Rav says, Eino soser. If he becomes tummy during the time when really the Nazirus is over, he's simply waiting for the hair to grow out. It doesn't undo his previous count. He doesn't have to count over again. And the Gemara explains that Rav says this afilu Rabbi Yochanan. Even according to Rabbi Yochanan, the Amar soser, who says, let's say you have a situation of tzaras, and so a Nazirus is suspended, and at that point in time, during the suspension of the Nazirus, he becomes tummy, it undoes everything. But Hani Mili Heicha Dekoy ben Nazirus. That's only true because he's in the middle of the Nazirus there. But Gidol Sar Mishlam Nazirasu. But here, where the time it's just the extension for the growth of the hair, really the Nazirus is over. It doesn't undo anything according to Rav. Shmuel Amar Soser, but Shmuel says no, it actually does undo it. And not only that, he says that even according to Reish Lakish. Afilu Reish Lakish Damar Ein Soser. Even according to Reish Lakish, who says that it doesn't undo the Nazirus. Let's say you're in a time period of suspension of the Nazirus when you become Tameh. But Hasam Shtei Nazirus, over there, it's two independent Nazirus. Let's say in a situation where you're suspending one Nazirus for another Nazirus, so the first Nazirus is in total suspension. You're in the second one. But Hacha Chada Nazirusa. But over here, it's really all part of one Nazirus. It's an extension of that one Nazirus, and therefore, if you become Tameh at that point in time, it will undo the count. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Chisda says, Hakol Modim, everybody agrees, Shem Kidesh Seir Bedam, that if he sanctified his hair with blood, now what that means is, let's say the person, he finished his term of Nazirus, he brought his karbanos, he sprinkled the blood, and then at that point in time, he's supposed to shave, but he becomes Tameh at that point in time, so Ein Lo Takana, so there is no solution for this individual, and right now, the Gemara thinks that means there's no solution for him to be able to ever have wine, because he's not going to be able to bring the karbanos again. He brought it once, he can't bring it a second time, and he can't shave because right now he is tameh. And so the Gemara says, Ali B'daman. So the Gemara says, who is this question, or who is this according to? Meaning, when you're saying everybody agrees that there's no solution, according to whom? According to which Tana is there no solution? Rabbi Eliezer, if we're following the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, but Kevon Damar Tikalachas Ma'akevis, Rabbi Eliezer holds that the shaving is Ma'akev, meaning, in order for Nazirus to be completed, not only does the Nazir have to bring the karbonos, he also has to shave. Without shaving, the term of Nazirus is not over. But according to Rabbi Eliezer, Toch Melosi, this is still within the term of the Nazirus, because according to him, you're still a Nazir until you shave, and therefore, if he became Tameh before the shaving, Velistor, it should undo everything, and actually he should have to count anew, start the Nazirus new, and so he does have a solution. He'll start the Nazirus all over again, bring karbanos and shave. Ela Ali b'derabanan. So the Gemara says, rather you're going to say that when we say there's no solution for this individual, it's following the Rabbanan. Ha'amri tiklachas lo ma'akeves. But the Gemara says that the Rabbanan, they hold that shaving is not even required, meaning to say, once you bring the karbanos, the term of the Nazirus is over, it's a mitzvah to shave, but it's not required, and so therefore he could have wine at this point in time, because his Nazirus is over. So what do you mean there's no solution? And the Gemara says, Liolam aliv the Rabbanan. No, really, when we say there's no solution, we are following the Rabbanan. Umay ein lo takana. What did it mean that there's no solution? It simply meant ein lo takana lemitzvahs giluach. There is no solution to fulfill the mitzvah of shaving properly. There is a mitzvah to shave that can no longer be fulfilled. B'tahara, he's no longer tar, he became tameh, so you can't fulfill the mitzvah of giluach. But most certainly, according to the Rabbanan, he is able to have wine at this point in time. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina says, Nazir shekalu lo yamav. Let's say you have a Nazir, he finished the amount of days of his term, so at that point in time, loka ala tumah, he can get malchus if he becomes tameh. Ve'eno loka ala tiklachas v'lo ala yayin, but he will not get malchus if he shaves or if he has wine. And Rashi here explains, Nazir shekalu lo yimei shloshim nazir stam ula naziris meruba kol yamim shehizr. The point is, let's say he was a 30-day Nazir, the 30 days are over. Or let's say it was a longer Naziris, the term has been completed. Ula achar melos shetzarach lavi karbonosav. Now the halacha is like we said, the day after he finishes his term, he's got to bring his karbonos. But now nitzma, he became tummy before he brought those karbonos. So lo galatuma, he is going to get malchus for becoming tamei. It's considered like becoming tamei during the Nazirus. Ve'eno lo gala tiklachas, but he's not going to get malchus for shaving. Avol eno lokim gilach kodem shevi karbonosav. Let's say he's going to shave before he brings his karbonos. He's not going to get malchus for that. O shasa yayin kodem shehevi karbonosav. Let's say he drinks wine before he brings his karbonos. He's not going to get malchus for that as well. There's a distinction. We say if it comes to a situation of tumah at that point in time, he gets malchus, but for shaving, for wine, he's not going to get malchus. And the Gemara questions this. Ma'ishna tumah delaki. What's the difference by tumah we say gets malchus? Damar kra, because the pasuk says by tumah, kol yemei haziro lashem, all the days that he's a nazir. L'rabos yomim shalachar melos kiyam shalifnei melos, comes to include even the days after the term is over, just like the days before the term is over. In other words, there's a pasuk, kol yemei haziro, says by tumah, it applies even after the term. But if you're going to make that drasha, if so, atiglachas nami l'chayiv. For shaving also, you can make the same kind of drasha and say he should be chayiv. Because by shaving, what does the pasuk say? Kol yemei neder nizro tar lo yavor al rosho. It says all the days of his nazirus, he's not allowed to shave. Uses a very similar language. Kol yemei haziro lashem, kol yemei neder nizro. And so therefore the same drasha we should make. La'asos yomim shala'achar melos ki yomim shalifnei melos. And we should say the days after the completion of the term should have the same status as the days before the completion of the term. V'suin further, kol yemei nizro mikol asher yasem migefen hayayin. We can say the same thing when it comes to wine. In other words, that should also be treated just like tumah. It says all the days of the nazirus, he has to separate from anything from the vine. Lasos yamim shalachar melos ki yamim shalifnei melos. It should say that the days after the term should be the same as the days before the term. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tesvav Amud Aleph.